tragedy. It was also a very intense situation and a brutal fight. It highlights the homeless and mental illness issues that trouble us in our Skid Row area.
This afternoon, LA Police Chief Charlie Beck defending his officers' actions and urging people not to rush to judgment after a struggle between the LAPD and a homeless man turned deadly. Hello everyone, I'm Dan Kleffler in New York. That shooting happened yesterday in LA's Skid Row and was recorded by bystanders and police body cameras. Now the mayor of Los Angeles holding a news conference. Let's listen in.
I watched the video and watched the tragic events unfold that we saw on our Skid Row yesterday. And first and foremost, the loss of any life in this town, no matter who it is a tragedy. A tragedy that we all should pause, reflect, mourn, think, and pray on. Tragically, someone who struggled to find his place in our town lost his life last night. We owe this city a thorough investigation as to what happened, but I'm very proud that because Los Angeles is leading the nation, we also had 2 body cameras on officers that were on scene and that had been activated and will be a part of this investigation, giving that transparency that we have undertaken to make sure people know what they are seeing on the streets of Los Angeles. But I would emphasize it's only one part, of course, of the overall evidence that we will see. And so until the facts come in, I would implore folks to serve as a reminder that our officers and too many Angelenos face extreme danger on our streets, to not draw any conclusions before we finish that work of investigation as well. I'll say a couple words in Spanish, then I'm happy to answer any questions as well. I'm going to say a couple things in Spanish real quick and then I'll do it. Al momento estamos muy lejos de una decisión final sobre lo que pasó ayer en Skid Row. Este incidente está siendo investigado por el Departamento de la Policía de Los Ángeles y el Inspector Independiente General y la Oficina del Fiscal del Distrito, que es una entidad gubernamental separada de la ciudad de Los Ángeles. He sido informado por el jefe de policía y como muchos angelinos, he visto el video en las noticias y por internet ayer. Pero sí sabemos esto. Hubo oficiales que enfrentaron una situación impredecible que movió rápido y trágicamente alguien que luchó por encontrar su lugar en nuestra comunidad perdió su vida. ¿Por qué nos hemos asegurado que Los Ángeles está liderando en la nación? Hubo 2 cámaras de cuerpo grabando la escena y el material de archivo está siendo revisada por los investigadores. Hasta tengamos los resultados, debemos ver este incidente como un recordatorio que nuestra policía y demasiados angelinos enfrentan a retos extremos cada día en nuestra ciudad. I'm happy to answer. Sorry. I have not yet personally, but I plan at some point to review this. Yes, absolutely.
The chief was asked why not release those because of all fewer than that.
Sure. Well, the protocols for how we are going to release in the future all of our body cameras, which I'm proud again that the city is leading on, will be the first big city in the country to have those. We are developing with our police officers, with our civil libertarians and others that have will give us the input about how that is done. But no matter, even when we have those protocols in place, I think it'll be rare that video will be released while an investigation is ongoing, and I think that's critical evidence. And I would remind people that cameras only tell one part of the story. They can be from one angle, they can be edited to show one part of the story. So this will be one element that will strengthen the investigation, but it will not by itself be the sole determinant. Sorry, I'll take him and then you. Yeah. In my mind, this is a police department that every single day rolls out and does the hardest work in this town. Remember, these police officers were responding to protect the most vulnerable people that we have in this city as well. So it was, for those who would see them as a force that maybe you could describe many decades ago, this is one of the most progressive forces anywhere in the world. Is it a force that can never make a mistake? Of course not. And I've always said it's how we respond to incidents that as much determines the strength of this department. But I'm very satisfied that we have the proper oversight, proper training, and increased transparency that we saw. So this, as tragic as a situation as is, I have great confidence in the system working here. Yes. I said I'd go here first, and y luego, sí. Okay, un momentito.
You know, there have been calls for an independent investigation from the governor's office, from other agencies, things of this nature. Have you heard from your constituents in the African American community, leaders and such? Are you getting feedback in that community, and if so, what are they telling you?
I never speak of one community with a singular voice. Certainly I've talked to leaders across the city today, and even last night people texted me. I was on the phone with different folks, and folks have emailed me. There's not a singular voice, and I think folks want to see the investigation be fair. I haven't heard calls. I've not received myself independent calls for the governor's office or anybody else coming in, and I have full faith in the city's ability through the county and the city to investigate this. En español también, yo tengo mucha confianza en el sistema aquí, el sistema para el Departamento de Policía, nuestro condado también, encontrar la verdad. Y la comunidad merece la verdad nada más, y este es importante. Y tenemos los ingredientes, un departamento más progresivo, uno de los más progresivos en los Estados Unidos, y tengo la confianza en este sistema. Sí. I have strong confidence in not only the training of individual officers, but all officers are trained, for instance, in dealing with the capacity of mental health issues that people have out there. These officers get an additional training above and beyond that. This was a fast-moving situation. I don't think you or I should judge whether tactics, whether a situation was done right or wrong before an investigation is done. So, no, body cameras help us get closer to all investigations. Add as much evidence as possible. Sometimes it's going to be crystal clear, and there are times it will be less crystal clear. But the murkiness that we've had in the past should be cleared up by body cameras more often than not. But nobody should depend on cameras by themselves telling the truth. They have one angle from one perspective at one moment in time that can be extremely helpful. I think in this case it will be helpful, but they by themselves are not the investigation. You need human beings to do that. Yes, sir.
It's a policy matter where you come down on what should or should not be released under the new body cam.
No, we've set up a working group to do that. I don't think a mayor should determine that. I think civil libertarians, I think police officers and their representatives, I think the community, and the way we've done it, I think, has been very robust. We actually have had many people go to the website of LAPD, give their comments long before this incident, long before we even saw the incidents in places like Ferguson or New York. We were testing this ahead of time. I'm sorry? Oh, absolutely, but I will let the experts come with the recommendations on those policies, and together with the City Council we'll implement, and the Police Commission, who has given charter authority on this as well, will implement a policy that will protect people's rights. Now, I would say one thing. For those who want to say, release the video always, you have to remember with video, if you develop policies, for instance, interviewing a rape victim after something has happened, I don't think I'll ever be comfortable releasing or making that available to the public. What we want is to have this at this point, help us with the investigation, get to the truth, our officers, nobody else, and everybody else deserves nothing less. I'm going to take 2 more questions, and I'm going to start this meeting. Hold on. I'm going to take 2 more questions. I'm going to try to go to new people, and then we'll go. Sorry, over here, hold. I'll come back to you for the last question, okay? Sure.
About 24 hours after this incident, we had the chief give a full rundown of what's known now. You're talking to it. Can you talk about
Sure.
the effort to sort of reach the public and the press, give an idea of what's going on? So
Absolutely.
we have a lot of instances like this, and the role that video played in
Right. Well, look, none of us wanted what happened last night to happen. Least of all the officers who were involved, and of course, not the individual who lost his life. But second, I'm proud that this city has taken the lead on these issues, both in how we respond to them and the equipment and the protocols we have in place. Remember, these cameras were first tested on Skid Row. So even as we're rolling out the cameras to other patrol officers this year, in this case, I'm glad that we have that additional evidence because we had senior lead officer and I believe one of the supervisors both wearing cameras and having activated them. as part of this protocol. That's the point of these cameras, to let people know what leads up to an incident. It doesn't say that you can or can't do certain behaviors. That will still be dictated by the folks who investigate criminal activity or departmental policy. But what it gives us all is an understanding of what a police officer goes through going in there and what the public is dealing with when they're interacting with a police officer, and I think that will be something that changes the circumstances in this case. To the quickness of which the response, it's very important to me that the police chief brief people immediately, that I get out there. You know, we had scheduled, I hope that wasn't a member of the press, that we, and we may all have to evacuate in a second, but that we all respond quickly and that we all respond to reassure people that there is the most robust investigation happening immediately. The DA's office rolled out last night, Inspector General's office rolled out yesterday, I should say, and the investigators from LAPD, all three. I'll sneak one other question in, and then I think we have to actually, we'll hear if it's a false alarm or not in a second.
Is this also a problem of the mentally ill being warehoused in the streets of Skid Row?
No question that this state and this county, I don't want to assign this specific case to anything yet, because we don't know the circumstances, and oftentimes people will use the excuse of mental health or other things for behavior that is criminal, but there is no question that one of the tragedies of homelessness is that this state for 30 years has not had the mental health care that people deserve, that we throw them into our jails and throw them out on our streets. It's something that I've implored the county, and I'm working very closely with the county to address, where the county may give us actually housing dollars from their mental health, because they realize that if we can get somebody off the streets and cured, it's cheaper for them and it's the right and humane thing to do. But ever since the state cut in the early 80s our mental health money, this has been one of the drivers of people staying and living on the streets. Absolutely. I think we all need to go. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti updating the very latest on the investigation that's going on right now on the deadly shooting of a homeless man in Los Angeles just yesterday. 3 officers had responded on the scene there, and now the investigation is underway as to exactly what happened. And ABC's Ted Rollins has been following the story for us when it first broke from our bureau in Los Angeles. And Ted, walk us through exactly then what happened. Get us up to speed exactly what happened yesterday that resulted in this death.
Well, originally officers were called to a robbery call on Skid Row, and this is an area in Los Angeles where the homeless do live. Overnight, they're allowed to use tents on the sidewalks and on the streets in this area, but starting in the morning, at 9 o'clock in the morning, they have to take those tents down. So when the officers came to respond to this robbery call, they encountered a tent, and the individual who later would perish in the shooting, tragically, was inside a tent. And apparently, according to witnesses and police, that's how this started. A confrontation over his tent not being up. And if you see the video, you can see it quickly escalates into a physical confrontation. They are on the ground on top of this individual. He is clearly fighting back. And then you hear first the tasing, and then you hear on that tape the gunshots, and it is very startling. If you watch this tape from beginning to end, it's dramatic, and when those gunshots go off, it's startling.
A point that has been made not only by the police chief but also there by the mayor is emphasizing the fact that there should not be a rush to judgment, despite the fact that there is the video that is out there, and also pointing to the fact that 2 of the officers that responded did have body cameras as well. But in fact, the chief has been defending his officers' reactions, though, correct?
Yes, in a press conference earlier this morning or this afternoon here in Los Angeles, Chief Charlie Beck came out. He had props with him. He had some photographs, some still images, first of the confrontation itself, where he isolated a shot and showed it to the press saying, look, this shows the suspect grabbing one of my officers' guns, and it's very hard to see, but you could see a hand there near the gun. And then he also showed a photograph of the officer's gun afterwards, and in that photograph he says it shows that the gun had been manipulated or had been at the center of a struggle because the gun itself had changed characteristics. So that'll be part of this investigation, but what you just talked about I think is going to be the key. Those body cameras, not just 1, 2 body cameras that the LAPD has possession of. They were on and recording. They'll be an integral part of this, not only the video, but the audio associated with it as well.
And as was pointed out there by the mayor, in fact, that is just one component to this investigation, not an entire, not to be, the judgment not to be determined just strictly because of those body cameras of the video or that cell phone video that we've been seeing.
Right, because of the angles of video and audio and the things that happened before and after. Eyewitness testimony will be key, and then the testimony of the officers themselves that have were called to this incident, what happened, and what the suspect said, what the officer said during this. There's been two different stories about the officer saying he has the gun or a gun. What exactly was said will also go into this. And quite frankly, did this suspect actually have control of the gun at any time, or was he just grabbing at it? That'll be analyzed as well. But what you're seeing in Los Angeles is a clear, swift reaction from the chief of police and the mayor. They do not want this to get out of hand. They're asking people to wait for this investigation to take place. We'll see what happens, though.
Well, Ted, what has there been any kind of very visible or any demonstrable response then from the public because of this?
The people on the scene in the video afterwards absolutely were astonished and were very opinionated against the officers. There have been a couple community activists that have come out today that are asking for reforms in the way police deal with the homeless, saying this is an ongoing issue. But we haven't seen yet here in Los Angeles the protests, the big numbers, what we saw in Ferguson and New York after incidents there that were caught on tape involving police officers. That has not happened, and that is what I think the mayor of Los Angeles is hoping will not happen, and that's why he was front and center today with this news conference.
What has been the relationship with the police officers and the police department and any kind of authority there in Skid Row?
It's been tenuous, as you might imagine. You're dealing with, as was brought up in this latest press conference, you're dealing with a group of people. A lot of times mental illness is involved there, and you're dealing with different generations of police. So over the years, that relationship has changed, and two of the officers that were wearing those body cameras are part of a special task force that has been enacted over the past few years to target just this area of Skid Row. They have extra training in dealing with the mentally ill, and they have been basically assigned this beat. So there's a proactive attempt to try to better relations between police and the homeless on Skid Row, but there's a long history there that has been up and down, to say the least.
All right, ABC's Ted Rollins in Los Angeles. Ted, thank you for that. I want to go over to our legal analyst, Dan Abrams, with more on this. Dan, I want to ask, how much of this investigation does it depend on if that homeless man reaching for the gun, what obviously his intent was?
Well, I mean, look, regardless of his intent, the question becomes, did he reach for the gun and did he actually get the gun? If he had, in any way, shape, or form, a police officer's gun in his hand, that as a legal matter is going to justify the shooting. The harder question becomes, was he lunging for the gun? I mean, you focus on this question of why did somebody yell, drop the gun, or something like that at the scene? That becomes incredibly important here. If there was no gun in someone's hand, in the victim's hand, then the question becomes, how close was he? Just to say he appeared to be lunging for it might not be enough. But if he had his hand on it, he was grabbing it, anything like that could very well justify this. Remember, as much as we talk about these issues of police shootings, the rules are different for police officers. They are there on the street with guns for a reason, to protect the public. And if someone goes in the context of a fight with the police and grabs a police officer's gun, as a legal matter, that is almost certainly going to justify the shooting.
How do the numbers then of the scene complicate the investigation? You've got 5 shots fired, 3 officers involved. Does it cloud the picture of trying to figure out exactly what happened?
Totally depends on what they have on that camera that one of the officers was wearing. It depends on what the vantage point was. Obviously, you're going to hear from the different officers. I think how many different officers fired does become important, because if there were 3, just for argument's sake, if there are 3 different officers firing, it sure does seem to indicate that they all at the same time became incredibly afraid of what was happening. If it was one officer firing all of the bullets, that becomes a different kind of issue.
Sadly, this is coming on the heels of Ferguson, coming on the heels of the Eric Garner case in New York. How is this going to be handled differently then?
You know, the one place that has experience with these kinds of issues more than anybody are the LAPD. I mean, they've got an independent inspector general who reviews every police shooting. They have dealt not just with the issues of police shootings, but they have dealt with the issues again and again of sensitive race-related police shootings, and they now have a system in place to address that. So while in other communities it might have served as a wake-up call, LA has already been awake to this issue. Whether they've done enough or not enough, separate question. But there's no question that they have a system in place to deal with these questions, and as a result, I don't think that the time and place we are in matters as much to LA as it might in a different community.
All right, legal analyst Dan Abrams. Dan, thank you for that. Okay, Dan. You can keep up with the story in real time by downloading the ABC News app and starring the story. For now, I'm Dan Kleffler in New York.